Wendy's question from Sunday.
A little bit. Well done. Yeah, good connector. That's exactly right.
Okay. Welcome back to Living Grounded. You're here with Lila and Tim.
Hello.
And we're recording this at the start of the new year. So we haven't done this in a bit. We took a little bit of a break, but now we're back in walking through the highlights of the Bible together with you. And we're currently in 2 Samuel.
Let's ready
go back into it. Yeah.
All right. The last 100 years or so has become the story of 3 political systems, really.
History teacher,
Yeah,
right there.
sorry. At the beginning of the century, the last few monarchies were replaced with, there's still a few around, but they're not real monarchies. They were replaced with either democracy or communism as the 2 competing systems. But what is the best political system? Is there one? Now, in ancient Israel, we left our last episode with Israel in civil war. And King Saul, who's lost God's favour, he's gone a bit nuts. He's been hunting down David, the promised future king. And so finally it kind of comes to a head. He and the armies of Israel are defeated at the mountain of the Battle of Mount Gilboa, not by David, but actually by the Philistines. But Saul dies. And David, he's deeply saddened by Saul's death. He takes no joy in the death of his enemy. But the civil war continues for a short time through one of Saul's sons until 2 years later, finally David is the last man standing. He's approached by all the tribes of Israel to be king. And his first act, or one of his first acts as king, is to lead the army against a group called the Jebusites, who live on the mountain fortress of Jebus, or as it's known today, Jerusalem. So David is victorious and he begins to reign. And so you kind of see this, you've got what we understand kind of as Israel today, King David, ruling from Jerusalem as his capital. He defeats the Philistines from there who killed Saul. He brings the Ark of the Covenant into the city. God's presence will be with them. It's called the City of David, the Holy City. Okay, here we go. Now, from there, David celebrates the arrival of the Ark by making sacrifices. You can kind of imagine this picture, David, all the people walking with him in this procession through the main road of Jerusalem. The ark is carried amongst them. They're making music. They're singing. It's this celebration. David is leading the way, only not as usual conquerors and kings. He's not on a war horse. He's not wearing armor or a sword. He's not even wearing the purple robe of royalty. He's in a humble priest's uniform made of linen. So this is so strange that even one of his wives, Saul's daughter Michelle, that's the Aussie translation I'm giving, but she's watching this and she despises what David's doing. This looks nothing like what a king should look like. David's even dancing and kind of in front of the ark and the procession. This isn't befitting of a king in Michelle's eyes. But you listen to what David says about this, which is, I think, points to something of the kingship of David, but also the nature of God's kings. Go, Lila.
David said to Michelle, "It was before the Lord who chose me, rather than your father or anyone from his house, when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor."
Yeah, so just to capture he's acknowledging what he's doing is terribly undignified, but he doesn't care. He's celebrating the Lord, and there's something wonderful in that humility that honors God. So this is a humble king.
Other than Saul and the ones before.
Yeah, that's right, and all the other kings of the world, really. He's a king who loves the Lord and desires his glory more than his own. David begins to plan a permanent house for God. So you remember the Ark of the Covenant still resides in a tent, the tabernacle. He says, "Here I am living in a house of cedar," while the Ark of God remains in a tent. But God responds through the prophet Nathan. David's not going to be the one to build God a permanent home. But you see this incredible promise that God makes to David in the midst of this?
2 Samuel 7:11-16, and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever.
So I think this stands as one of the pillars of God's covenant promises in the Bible. Sometimes we label that under the covenants of grace or the covenant of grace. So it sits in line with, for instance, as we've already seen, Genesis 3. So God's promise to Adam and Eve that an offspring of the woman will come who's going to crush the head of the serpent. You've got God's promises to Abraham that I think sit under the covenant of grace. So that Abraham's descendants will be as numerous as the stars of the sky, and that he'll be blessed and a blessing to all the nations. And now you've got this covenant promise to King David. Someone of his line will reign over God's people forever. Now, just very quickly, this is one of those promises or prophecies that you need to see there is what we might call a near and a far fulfillment. So in some sense, this will be fulfilled through one of David's sons, Solomon. Solomon will build the temple of the Lord. But at the same time, as you look at it, well, Solomon's not going to reign over God's kingdom forever. That's right. And even other pieces don't quite fit. And yet, as we'll see, there is a far fulfillment that does do something wonderful as a son of David. But David responds to this promise with joy and faith.
Verse 28 and 29, Sovereign Lord, you are God. Your covenant is trustworthy, and you have promised these good things to your servant. Now be pleased to bless the house of your servant, that it may continue forever in your sight. For you, Sovereign Lord, have spoken, and with you a blessing, the house of your servant will be blessed forever.
Okay, so but this brings us to the final piece for today. It's one of David's most gracious acts. David asks, is there a son of the house of Saul left that I might show kindness to him?
Oh, wow.
And it turns out that there is. There's a crippled man called Mephibosheth. Enjoy that name. David orders that he be brought to him. And it's just worth reading this. Lila will read it for us.
When Mephibosheth, don't name your kids like that, please. No. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, Mephibosheth, at your service, he replied. Don't be afraid, David says to him, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. Mephibosheth bowed down and said, What is your servant that he should notice a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's steward, and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops, so that your master's grandson may be provided for. And Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, Your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons.
Well done.
Here we go.
Did I include that passage just to make Lila say Mephibosheth?
I hope you enjoyed it.
But you see that last line. Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons.
That's huge.
David adopts the son of his enemy. It's a beautiful picture of David's heart, but it's a heart that reflects God's heart.
So how does 2 Samuel or like that passage point us to Jesus? Is he the one that it's like pointing to?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think the Bible's answer to the best system of government is actually a kingdom under a king. Not a king like in our world, a king who loves his enemies, who isn't vindictive, a humble king who doesn't care how he looks, who loves God, who finds his greatest joy in glorifying him, who loves to show kindness even to the children of his enemies. Matthew makes a particular note of Jesus' royal line. Jesus is the flesh and blood of David. He's an ancestor of David, a son of David, as he is called. It's a title that recognizes Jesus as the answer to God's promise in 2 Samuel. Jesus is the king of God's people who is going to sit on David's throne forever. And he's the king I think we should long for. In Philippians 2, Paul describes the humility of King Jesus, a king who would give up the glory of the throne of heaven, not to be born in a palace, but something like a stable. He didn't grow up in comfort and luxury. He grew up something closer to poverty. He could have summoned a legion of angels, but he chose not to own any possessions. He endures humiliation and ridicule, even to the point of an unjust criminal's death on a cross. And all this he does for the sake of his enemies so that they can be saved, and even more than just saved from God's judgment.
So how does that help us living grounded today?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, I think, in life today to feel like you're nothing. Our workplaces can make us feel like just a cog in a machine. You're just making profit for someone else. Hollywood, celebrity culture can just make you feel like nothing. No one knows your name. You don't live in a mansion with a nice car or two that people look up to. Social media can make you feel like nothing. Everything, it feels like everything other people are doing is more interesting than what you're doing, more exotic than what you're doing. And now you add AI into the mix, and that's going to make you feel like nothing because you're useless compared to AI. It can do everything better than you, which just leads to this kind of, I think, this feeling that many people feel, I think, which is just worthlessness.
Yeah.
But in Jesus, when we trust in Jesus, we see something very different. We might be, in some sense, like Mephibosheth, crippled, dead dogs, he calls himself. But we've been adopted into the family of God. We eat at the table of Jesus. Paul says in Romans, now if we're children, then we're heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. That's an incredible statement, co-heirs with Christ. Like Mephibosheth, you have been lifted up. You've been lifted up to sit at the table of the king. I love a line in a song, once his enemy, now seated at his table. In Ephesians, Paul says, by the grace of God, you've been raised up with Christ and seated with Christ. That's who you are. That's where you are. Your physical eyes might see a pretty sorry set of circumstances. Maybe in the world's eyes, you are actually a bit worthless, a bit of a nothing. But, you know, even though you are one human in the midst of billions of people, even though you are on one planet in the midst of billions of stars, the encouragement is to see with eyes of faith that you're actually a son or daughter of God, seated at the table of King Jesus. You, in some sense, reign with him. That's God's grace to you. That's something that I reckon we can just kind of rest in and rejoice in and remember. Yeah.
So good. Well, that's encouragement for today. Keep listening to Living Grounded in this new year as we keep walking through the halls of the Bible together. And next week, we'll see you again for the next part of 2 Samuel.
Yeah, and if you are just kind of tuning into Living Grounded for like the first time, why not go back to all the old episodes and start from the start? That's our suggestion. Good on you.
Yeah. See you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Good one.
Yes.